the channel. This is Have Roots Will Travel. My name is Lisa Elvin Staltari, and yes, indeed, I am a genealogist and a passionate traveler. Over the last several years, I've been exploring les filles du roi and getting to know their stories a little bit better. Today, we're on episode 254. There are in total over 700. We've come a long, long way. Still a long way to go. Before I let you go, I just want to make sure y'all know to subscribe, like, and notify. All of that helps my logarithms and all that good stuff. I have some platforms that you can also utilize for contribution. They are Coffee and Patreon. They permit you to contribute as you see fit. Also, on my Have Roots Will Travel website, you have a PayPal button that you can use. And we also have a super thanks that YouTube permits those of us who have over 1,000 subscribers. Thank you so much to all my subscribers to have as well. So you can click on that button and donate. So whatever you can do, that is wonderful. If all you do is press like, I am forever in your debt. Thank you so much, because that helps all the rest of my efforts. So I appreciate you all so very much. So let's get on with the show and see who our Fille du Roi of episode 254 is. Today's episode of Les Filles du Roi is episode 254, Marie Meunier. And she comes to us via a viewer request. Let's get to know Marie a little bit better. She was born in 1643 in Gagne, in the Hauts-de-France region, and inside of that region, she is part of the Oise department. Her parents were Claude Meunier and Catherine Carpentier. Gagne is a population of over 40,000 today, so it really is a thriving place. It has existed from at least the 5th century BC, and it is of Roman origin, and it was referred to as compendium, which is a name derived from the word meaning shortcut. This town flourished in the Middle Ages and was the site of assemblies and councils under the Moravian kings. In 833, Louis the Pious was deposed here. Charles II the Bald enlarged the town and founded the Abbey of Saint-Comblain, now the home of the municipal library. And it became a commune in 1153, and a monument to Joan of Arc commemorates her capture there by the Burgundians in 1430. The church that she would have been baptized in is Saint Antoine, and like the Church of St. James, the other church in the city, was founded in 1199 and depended closely on the Abbey of Saint-Comblain, which had the patronage of all the parish priests of the city. And the construction took place during the first half of the 13th century, but the church was profoundly transformed in the 16th, probably due to the damage suffered during the 100 Years' War. And thus it became a fairly homogeneous building where you could really see the beauty of it. Now, this is where she would have come from, this incredibly historic place. Think about that for a minute. She comes to this brand new place with no history really to speak of, and she's leaving behind an incredible tapestry, if you will, of major events and just this history that she is coming from. So I can only imagine what she thought when she first saw New France. She arrived at the Saint Jean-Baptiste de Dieppe on October 2nd, 1665. She arrived with about 200 pounds worth of a dowry. We have no knowledge if her parents were alive or deceased. Like her, his name Michel Chrétien, and he was born in 1640 in Loches in France. He is part of the Centre-Val de Loire region, and inside that region, he is part of the Département Indre et Loire. His parents were Jacques Chrétien and Catherine Nivard. Now, Loches grew up around a monastery founded about 500 by Saint Ours and belonged to the Counts of Anjou from 886 until 1205. In that last year, it was seized from King John of England by Philip Augustus, and from the middle of the 13th centuries until after the time of Charles IX of France, the castle was a residence of the kings of France, apart from a very brief period in 1424 when it was heritably granted to Archibald Douglas, Duke of Touraine. And finally, in 1441, Antoine Guenard, Lord of La Selle-Guenard, was appointed captain and governor of Loches in that period. The 11th and 12th century church of Saint-Ours has a commanding presence in the town, and it means that its four towers are visible from almost any location within the town. I can only imagine what it would be like to visit here. Now, as part of what they do here, liquor, distilling, and tanning are carried on together with trade in farming. They farm wine, farm produce, wine, wood, and livestock are all part of what they do here. Very cool. This is one of the quickest marriages I've seen. Remember, apparently she came on October 2nd, 1665. By October 13th, there she is, getting married. I love it. I love it. So, for whatever reason, it was a very fast, whether they knew each other, whether it was I don't know. It just seemed really fast to me when I was reading it. I think they signed the contract on the 9th, and she arrived on the 2nd. So it's just, I mean, they're usually very fast, these weddings, but definitely. There's something for any descendants to check into and see if there was a connection between the two. Of course, they settle in Quebec City. Let's review a little bit about this place. It is the capital of the province of Quebec in Canada. About 500,000 people lived directly in Quebec City at this time. Quebec was originally named by the Algonquins, who the name Quebec, which in their native language meant where the river narrows. Quebec City lies where the St. Lawrence River narrows, and appropriately, that's what it was called. Samuel de Champlain founded a French settlement here in 1608 and called it Ville de Quebec. He surrounded it with city walls, which still are there, parts of that, and making Quebec City the only city with remaining city walls in North America. Two things that are really part of the history of Quebec City. On the upper left of your screen, you see a house with a red roof. I don't know if it had a red roof at that time, but that building dates from 1675, and it is the oldest private residence in Quebec. And it is now houses one of the most famous restaurants, Aux Anciens Canadiens, which means to our old Canadians. And so you kind of get a feel when you walk in of the historical, feeling of 1675. That's kind of the same era of when Michel and Marie would have been there and could have been there. I'm sure they weren't, but that's where it, kind of gives you that feeling. Now, Le Petit Champlain, which claims to be the oldest shopping district in North America, actually, is on the bottom left. So that's something that they could have, definitely walked in. We have a map or illustration, if you will, from 1700. That gives you a good idea. And here's a map which clearly shows Quebec and the narrowing of the St. Lawrence River. In the 1667 census, we have Michel and Marie, 25 and 23, just starting out. They have 4 alpha-malars, about 2 acres of land. They would eventually settle at Charlebourg, and it is now a borough of Quebec City, but at one time it was its own very unique place. The origins of Charlebourg begin with the concession of the Seigneurie of Notre-Dame-des-Anges in 1626. The seigneurie was very large, and by 1665, the new intendant of justice, Jacques Danon, set out to establish 3 new villages further north on the plateau. So you can imagine that the Jesuits were not that pleased with it. Now, I want to draw your attention to that upper left side. You can clearly see the squares that represent Charlebourg, Bourg-Royal, and Petite-Auvergne. Now you can see Charlebourg is laid out in kind of a star shape, if you will, and that's very unusual pattern. And the little tiny square in the middle, that represented the church and any other kind of communal situation. And so the idea was to have all of the land pointing to the church. And so that would be the middle ground. So you would kind of like your backyard essentially would face the church. So you would always be connected. And that was kind of the feeling, if you will, of just kind of trying to have that communal feeling. These are the only areas. There's one other area, I believe, in Manitoba that is laid out like this. So it's a very, very unusual kind of layout for land. And you can see in the bottom left, you can see as late as the 1960s, it still has that extra, that shape, and it's still laid out in that way. On the bottom right, we have Charlebourg. It looks like it's very far away from Quebec, but it isn't. And then, of course, the church of Saint Charles de Borromée. This is not the church that was there at the beginning, but eventually would grow. This is definitely the parish that would evolve from the small parish church that was built. In 1681, we have Michel Chrétien, Marie Meunier, Marie, Michel, Jacques, Claude, Pierre. They have one gun, deux bêtes à cornes, remember, 2 animals with horns. And they have 9 alpins, about 7 acres of land, I would think. Children. Marguerite would die before the 1681 census. Marie would marry Michel Dupère and have 7 children, all of whom would make it to adulthood. Michel would marry Marguerite Coeur and have 7 children, 5 of whom would make it. Jean-Charles would marry Marguerite Roy and have 8 children, 5 of whom would make it to adulthood. Claudine would marry Robert Séguin and have 3 children, all of whom would make it. She would then marry Pierre Joubert and have 3 children, all of whom would make it. Jean-Baptiste would marry Catherine Roy and have 10 children, 9 of whom would survive and 7 who would leave descendants. We have Pierre, who we have no information on, and we have Marie-Renée, who would marry Jean-Louis Boyer, but would not leave any track. Passed away on the 27th of August, 1698. She was 55 years old. She and Michel would have been married 33 years the very following October. She would leave us 105 descendants as of 1729. Michel would not remarry and would die at the remarkable age of 81. And both are buried at Charlebourg. And that ends the story of Marie and Michel. Just a lovely couple. And they were really pioneers at Charlebourg and went on to have all of those descendants. I think it's remarkable. They lived a nice life. And although she died fairly young, not for that period, but certainly we always like it when they live longer, that he lived an extraordinary life. So we are very, very grateful to Marie and all that she did for her family and for eventually all of Quebec. So we are grateful that she came to our shores, and we bless her memory. I also want to say thank you to my patrons, supporters, and viewers. All of you contribute to the continuation of this grand project that I'm on. Didn't know it was a project when I started, but now it is. So with that, I will say au revoir until I see you on episode 255.